It's a kind of magic, a kind of magic. One dream, one soul, one prize, one golden glance of what should be.
Hola, buenos días a todos. Yo no soy speaker, soy presentador del speaker. Quería en primer lugar felicitar a Innova por haber dado relevancia en este foro a la educación. Yo creo que si el sistema educativo tuviera voz, hoy daría las gracias a este foro por sacarle de su prisma habitual, que es o la política o la productividad del sistema educativo, o sea, los rendimientos, y verle bajo un prisma de innovación, creatividad, talento, etcétera. La propuesta de Santillana hoy es traer a un invitado, que ahora presentaré, para hacer una reflexión sobre qué modelo educativo necesitamos en el futuro. Yo creo que es un futuro casi más presente. Un modelo educativo que tiene que preparar a una generación de estudiantes, los ya llamados nativos digitales, y que tiene que prepararles para afrontar un mundo en constante transformación, profunda y rápida, y que tiene que extraer de ellos todo el potencial para que sean capaces de manejarse en ese mundo cambiante y que está en permanente transformación. Desde el grupo que represento, desde Santillana, estamos absolutamente convencidos de la potencialidad de las tecnologías en ese camino a la innovación. Creemos que uno de los drivers fundamentales de la innovación del sistema educativo serán las tecnologías, no solo de los drivers, también de las razones por las que hay que innovarlo. Creemos que son buenas para aprender y comprender mejor, creemos que facilitan la enseñanza y creemos que pueden aportar una dinámica de conversación, de vitalidad, de participación y de colaboración que le darían una nueva dimensión. Mi opinión es que el día que dos generaciones de la misma categoría, el día que una net generación de profesores se encuentre con una net generación de alumnos, la transformación va a ser prácticamente ineludible, incluso sin entrar en posiciones alarmistas. Creo que cuando se junten profesores y alumnos de la generación 2.0, puede que se produzca una evolución del modelo educativo, incluso que podamos hablar de un nuevo paradigma educativo. Para esta conversación hemos pensado que una de las voces en este momento más influyentes, más implicadas del debate educativo es Richard Gerver. Richard es experto en transformación cultural y organizativa. De hecho, hará alguna mención a cómo aprender del mundo de la empresa para transformar la escuela. Es experto en todo lo relacionado con innovación, con creatividad y con talento, y con todo lo relacionado con liderazgo. Yo creo que todos esos componentes que he mencionado y su expertise son fundamentales en ese camino de innovación y de transformación del modelo educativo. Richard es requerido en todo foro, evento que se precie relacionado con la educación, es asesor de varios gobiernos. Él fue, creo recordar que en el 2003, asesor del gobierno de Tony Blair para política educativa. Tuvo un papel muy relevante en el Congreso Mundial de Educación de la UNESCO en Lisboa. Ha creado la International Curriculum Foundation, ha asesorado a The Blue Group en la creación de escuelas en Nueva York y es comentarista habitual de Times, de Daily Telegraph o de la BBC. Por cierto, la BBC acaba de terminar una serie llamada The Teacher, donde trata de reilusionar a los docentes en la tarea de enseñar. Richard publicó un libro que fue el libro más vendido en Amazon, libro educativo en Amazon durante unos meses, que es Creating Tomorrow's Schools Today, y estamos desde luego deseando la anunciada publicación en torno al talento que hará probablemente dentro de este año. Además de todo lo que sabe, Richard es un tipo optimista, tiene buen humor, y lo recalco porque en el debate educativo el optimismo y el buen humor se echan en falta, y tiene una capacidad de comunicación, como veréis ahora, espectacular. Vamos, es un showman en sí mismo. So, Richard, please come in. Welcome, Richard. Thank you for coming. We are all looking forward to listening to you.
Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you.
Wow. How cool is this place? I want to be dressed up as a clown. I wanted to come on stage on a unicycle, but health and safety wouldn't let me. I mean, wow. I was reflecting, just stood out the back here, having met Maria, thinking to myself, who knew that this is where I would end up? 10 years ago, I was a school principal in the middle of the UK, in a place that nobody's ever heard of. And now, I find myself stood here in Madrid in one of the grooviest conferences I've ever been stood at. And apart from being terrified, I thought to myself, this is all because of YouTube. A few years ago, a short television program was made about my work in the school that I was lucky enough to lead, and it found its way onto YouTube. 4 years later, I'm stood here at this conference talking to you. And of course, the interesting thing is that 10 years ago, who knew about YouTube? And 10 years ago is significant for me because 10 years ago, I started my job as a school principal. And it is because of the rapid advances in digital technology and social media that my life has changed beyond all recognition. Now, I look around the audience and I know many of you are far too young for me to ask this question, but how many of you have teenage children of your own? Can you just put up your hands for me, please? I can tell. Parents of teenage children have that look. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? A mixture of exhaustion and hatred. I have a teenage daughter. It's why I spend my life traveling around the world. Right? But here's my other point. Those of us with teenage children who are now coming to the end of their education journey in formal education, in schools, when they started education 14 years ago, none of us knew that there would be a Facebook or a Twitter or a YouTube or a social network revolution that would change the world in which we live. Yet, our children, even those finishing school today, have been educated in a world and educated in a system that is fundamentally over 100 years old. And the reason I stand in front of you today is to say that I believe, I'm hoping the technology will work. There we go. Oh, come back. I believe that we need to dramatically change the paradigm of education to meet the challenges of the world we now live in and the incredible rate of transformation that the digital realm is bringing into the globe in which we live. I'll give you an example of where my greatest fear comes from. A few years ago, when I started this journey of traveling around the world and talking about education transformation, I had an experience which summed up for me the greatest problem of the system as it exists today. I was at a regional airport in the United Kingdom where I wanted to order I feel that because I'm here, what's really important to me is cultural exchange, by the way. And I thought in the interests of cultural exchange, I should share with you a great British culinary delicacy. And I know now you're all looking at that, and you're looking at me, and now you understand why British people are overweight. I tried to wear slimming trousers today. I can't breathe because I've had too many of these. Now, for those of you that might be interested, by the way, because you never know, when you visit Britain, I know some of you are looking at that now and your mouths are watering. I know this. Some of you are looking at it thinking, that is the reason why I'm a vegetarian. But should you ever want to order one in the United Kingdom, that is called a sausage cob. I don't know if there's a translation, but that's what it is. So I'm at an airport in the UK, and when I travel, I like to treat myself to these because my wife is a fitness fanatic. And at home, I am only allowed to eat lettuce and water. And I know you're looking at me again now thinking, you must travel a lot then, Richard. So, you see, I get to the airport, I get to the front of the queue at the restaurant at this airport, and I'm so excited, my mouth is watering, right? And I get to the front of the queue, and I'm met by Billy. And Billy is the kind of young man who has probably been very successful in the traditional education system. He's about 18 or 19 years of age. He's just come out of school, and he is already the front of house senior supervisor for this airport catering team, right? And he has 5 gold stars for customer service. This boy is a catering guru, right? So I get to the front of the queue excited, and Billy immediately shows me why he is the expert he is. Because he stands there and he says, "Hello, sir. How may I be of service today?" I said, "I'd like a sausage cob." He said, "We don't serve those here. You can't have a sausage cob at this restaurant." Now, you have to understand the geography of the situation. Here's Billy. Over Billy's right shoulder, about a foot behind him, is a pile of freshly grilled sausages. Right? These sausages have been grilled by somebody who clearly has a passion for sausages. Do you have the Ferrero Rocher adverts over here on television? Right, you know the pyramids, you know, right? That's what this looked like, okay? Over his other shoulder was a pile of freshly baked bread rolls. So I look at the sausages and I look at the rolls. And Billy, who is clearly an expert in body language, sees me do this. And he says, "Oh, yes, sir, I can see your problem." He said, "You can only have a sausage and a bread roll as part of a full English breakfast." I said, "I don't want a full English breakfast." Anyway, after a few minutes of discussion, because he had 5 gold stars for customer service, he said, "I shall go and have a word with the kitchen manager." So he disappeared out the back, came back a few minutes later with a smile on his face, and he said, "I think I have sorted your problem." I said, "That's very kind." He said, "I am afraid I can't sell you a sausage cob because there is no sausage cob on the cash till. But," he said, "what I can do is I can sell you a plate of sausages, and separately I can sell you 2 bread rolls." So then, you see, I'm heading to the cash till. You have IKEA in Spain as well, right? IKEA? Yeah. So I'm now heading to the cash till with my IKEA self-assembly sausage cob. Thinking to myself, Billy, as a teacher, what have I done to you? Because, of course, the traditional education system is built around certainties, isn't it? Education was created to control groups of people and to ensure they were trained to live lives that were certain. And of course, what we know today is the world is simply not like that. We know that today, I'm hoping this is going to work. Hello? The world is, let's carry on. The world is simply not like that. We live in a world of rapid change, of rapid development. I came across, a number of years ago, the work of a professor of human engineering, a man called Jens Rasmussen, who was a Danish professor who did a lot of work in the early 1980s, which I think is very interesting in terms of dates. Because Jens Rasmussen, in the early 1980s, was looking at what created successful organizations based on human interaction. And what he discovered will not surprise any of you. He said most organizations in the world are predicated on two structures. First of all, businesses, traditionally successful businesses, employ people with a high skill set. In other words, they've been trained to work in a particular field, and when they're employed in an organization, they have that skill set. And then what organizations do is they invest in professional development training for those people so that they improve those skills to do the job they've been employed to do. So in other words, if you are working in a finance team in an organization, you come in with a skill set that says you're an accountant. And then what happens is the company will continue to train you to deliver those specific skills to improve the quality of your job. He said the other thing that traditionally successful companies do is then introduce you to systems. They introduce you to your job description. So in other words, traditionally successful companies employ people with a high level of skill. They then build around them the walls that constrain and define the job they have to do. Now, traditional companies were all about maximizing productivity of the service or product you have always produced. We were in an industrial age. So, of course, I'm sure over here in Spain, you will have had another name for the methodology behind traditional business was time and motion. The Japanese were mastered the time and motion process. How do you do more of the same more efficiently? And of course, that was how traditional companies had always succeeded and reached positions of dominance. However, in 1982, when Jens Rasmussen produced this report, he said those companies in the 21st century that operate at that level will die. Because the nature of the future is that service and product cannot remain the same. He said the successful companies in the 21st century will move into a third realm, a realm that he called the knowledge state. In other words, you would still employ people with a skill set, you would still introduce them to the basic parameters of the job they had to do, but then, as a systemic part of the process and development of that organization, you would constantly encourage your employees to challenge and break the rules, to try and redefine the product and service. And of course, so many of you work in those sectors that would be considered to be 21st century business and industry. And you know and appreciate that it is that ability to constantly challenge the convention of what you do that will ensure not just the survival, but the growth of the organization you run. And of course, that is determined by the pace and rate at which digital media and digital technology is transforming. That simply because you've created a service or a product that works today, you know within 6 months that service or product will be out of date. So you have to have a workforce that is constantly challenging convention and pushing the boundaries. Now, at this point, I just ask you to reflect on that and think, how far down that line does traditional schooling go? My contention would be that traditional schooling stops at systems. We teach children basic skills and knowledge. We introduce to them rules and regulations about the way we function, but as a system, we don't then push them into that third state, which is the knowledge state. And therefore, if we're to produce generations of future business leaders and employees that can drive our futures industries forward, we have to ensure that education moves far further into that third state. I want to talk a little bit about that now. I've only got about 5 minutes left, so I really want to just push this point a little bit. One of the questions that I get asked a lot, one of the things we all hear a great deal in the world in which we exist, is that notion of the term creativity. It seems to me that at the moment, that word is the silver bullet, which we are persuaded that if we master that word, somehow we will create a sustainable future. And one of the issues I have with the word creativity is, what do we mean by it? Now, in education terms, there are massive debates at the moment about we have to teach children to be more creative. We have to introduce more creative levels of learning in our schools. And that concerns me, because I don't think you can teach creativity. And I also think creativity is much more closely linked to what Jens Rasmussen referred to as the knowledge state. And actually, one of the great challenges for us is that I think the best equipped people to thrive in the 21st century are our children who are under 5 years of age. Because if you think about children under 5 years of age, they innovate, they create, they question, they challenge, and they learn at extraordinary rates. Because they haven't yet learnt to only learn within the parameters and systems of set rules. So a great question for me is, where does creativity go? Well, to me, the best way to define creativity in terms of education and business, actually, is to say it's the ability to find something of interest, to have the courage and confidence to be able to challenge that thing of interest, to explore it, to question it, to play with it. And then, as a result, to come up with new hypotheses, new ideas, new thinking around that concept. Sometimes for you personally, sometimes for a wider group of people, something more collaborative. So there are critical questions, which is, where does creativity go? And I want to show you an example on the next slide, if I can. I love this, don't you? The irony that we're at a leading technology conference. Ah, okay. Right. This is a great image. This is taken from a book called Earth from the Air. I often show this image to both adult audiences and children. I'd like you to look at it and in your head work out what it is. Now, the interesting thing is, when I show this to an adult audience, what they look for is the right answer. Because what education has taught us to do is to constantly look for the right answer in everything. Education is predicated on getting things right. We are taught from an early age, aren't we, that getting things right shows how intelligent you are. And the more questions in education you're able to get right, the more intelligent you are. So this is the way we look at it as adults. We start to piece together the logic. So we say blue, water, brown, land, green, could be pollution, could be algae. But actually, I think it's sulfur. I think it's sulfur because this looks like somewhere volcanic. It looks volcanic because there's a hot spring, there's the residue of a laval flow. I also think this is a tourist destination because there's a bridge, and there are people on the bridge in t-shirts and shorts. So now I'm thinking to myself, as an adult, the right answer is, that is Yellowstone National Park. When you show that to a room full of children under the age of 6, the most common response you get is that that's the face of a wizard or a witch. Because the point is, isn't that lovely? Nobody's taught them to find the right answer. They immerse themselves in the possibilities of what it could be. And isn't that actually more of what we need in the people who are working forward in the industries of the 21st century? You then move that on okay? And you say to them, all right, what's the story behind the picture? And adults at this point have shut down. They've no idea what you're talking about. Can we go back to that last slide? Thank you. They have no idea what you're talking about. When you ask children what the story is behind that picture, my favourite response came from a group of 7-year-old students who, after 30 seconds, came up with this story. They said, what's happening in that picture is that there's an evil wizard in the top corner. You can't see them, but they're sucking all of the colour out of the earth. And the people on the bridge are brave soldiers, and it's their job to stop the world from becoming black and white. How staggering is that? Yeah, I know. Aren't children amazing? Aren't they? So the question is, what is it we do to them in education that takes away that profound sense of creativity and innovation that's necessary to thrive in the world we now live in, and a world that is becoming increasingly uncertain? And let me finish here because I've run out of time. For me, the greatest challenge that faces all of us in society, and a challenge I throw back to digital industries, is we have to create a population who perceive risk in a totally different way. Risk has to be something we're all aiming for, not something we avoid. Risk has to be something that we train our young people to explore and look for, both in education and in their lives. Because if I've learnt nothing else in my time as an educator, I think I've learnt this: that you learn nothing new from getting something right. You only ever learn something new from the point of a mistake or the realization that you can't do something or you don't know something. So if we're truly to drive forward business in the 21st century, we need to find a way to encourage entire generations on a global scale of people who are prepared to learn. And in order to learn, they need to take risks. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Great. Richard, thank you for a wonderful presentation. Fantastic. We're running short on time, but I would like to take a couple of questions. Please come up to the microphone. And while you're asking your question, if there's somebody else that would like to ask a question after the gentleman, please start coming up to the microphone.
Hi, thanks for a great presentation.
Thank you.
One of the parents of those kids that are under 15, how did you confront the educational system? Because, I agree with all your principles, but the schools my kids have available are not going to change in the next 10 years. So what do I do? Take them out of school?
I think that is a fantastic question. And I think one of the things that I find, and I'm increasingly frustrated by actually, is that the majority of business leaders I talk to, the majority of parents that I talk to, the majority of educators that I talk to, realize that the system isn't working. And therefore, somehow, we need to seek profound change and development. And it strikes me that the people actually who are preventing that change and development are our politicians, who by nature are a group of people who see control as the purpose of politics. And so therefore they create an education system which is centred around control. What needs to happen, of course, is that education needs to be developed as a system of empowerment. And in order to do that, that's counterintuitive to what a number of politicians say. However, there are countries around the world now who are developing much more expansive, open-ended versions of education. And as a result, in the global statistics, have you heard of the OECD reports and the PISA reports? The countries who are achieving the greatest levels of development are countries that have developed much more open-ended, skills-based approaches to education. What I would suggest we all do is use our expertise through social networking and digital media to build a movement that truly confronts some of our politicians to say, hey, even the global data tells us the system you're pervading and developing and maintaining in this country and across most of the developed world isn't working. And I think that's absolutely core to how we ensure our children have a proper future.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much for your talk. It was really great. I just wanted to ask you if you could give parents of 5-year-olds and below any practical tips on how do we foster that creativity going forward, because we don't really have any clue.
Absolutely, and it's very hard to answer this because the answer is, as parents, we have to ensure our children don't feel the pressure of having to get things right. Now, of course, before they're 5, in the home environment, we play with our children, we allow them to take journeys of exploration, don't we? They make up stories and they play in front of us and we play with them and we allow them to explore imagined worlds. Because of the pressures that are on us as parents, because of the traditional paradigm, as soon as they start school, we start to think of learning as being a serious business and something that the schools do in terms of transferring knowledge to our children. And we're guilty because we want the best for our children. You know, by the time they reach 7, 8, 9, 11, 14, and so on, we start to add to the pressure. Get your head down, study hard, pass your exams. Why did you get those questions wrong? Your teacher tells me you're making too many mistakes. And actually, the challenge as a parent is to fight the intuition, to force your child into the pressured experience of just doing what they're told and getting things right. And at least in the home environment, ensuring you maintain that magical opportunity to explore, to take journeys, and most importantly, to make mistakes. That's what I'd say.
One last question.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. How do you think continued education of business owners or people need to continue going? How are we going to learn? I think traditional education, the MBAs or whatever, are teaching very old stuff. How can we continue doing that?
I think the really important thing is to realize that people who are traditionally seen as educators, teachers, university professors, are no longer the custodians of the education and skills we need in the future. I think we need to have more confidence in the collaborative nature of normal people. Do you know what I mean? One of the things I'm passionate about in the future model of education is breaking down the traditional walls of saying it's in schools and universities that we do our learning. When, of course, in reality, most of the learning we do today happens online and through the use of digital media and social networking. And I actually believe we as a society need to stop believing that the only valid learning is stuff that results in an examination or a degree or a qualification, and have more confidence in each other and the use of the media that we use, social and digital media, to realize actually the most powerful learning happens unplanned through networking, through multitasking, through developing relationships with one another across the world. And actually it's that informal, soft learning where the most powerful change is going to happen. So I would say we need to trust in each other more and less in the formal structures of education.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Richard for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much. Woo!